Hello everyone. Welcome. My name is Brian Reid. I'm an Exchange MVP and an Office 365 consultant based out of the United Kingdom. And I was asked by the compliance and security team of Office 365 to come and give you a whistle-stop tour of ways to secure your Office 365 tenant. Okay. The intention for our session today is to cover lots of stuff, okay, and to demo it. Okay, just to give you a glimpse, okay, and to try and answer some of the questions along the lines of, can I do more to secure, or can I add to the security, or it's in the cloud, therefore it's not secure, type questions, and try and give you some answers to those. Okay. So we're going to have a look at things like message encryption. We're going to look at mobile phone management. We're going to have a look at rights management protection. That was mentioned in the keynote. We're going to have a look at passwords, a password reset. We're going to have a look at clients, installation of software. Lots of things we're going to do. Okay. I think it's 10 things, but it might be a few more. Okay. If you've got any questions, we'll take them at the end. Okay. And you can either add them to the Yammer second screen, and the link is on the bottom of every slide, so you can add them in there, and we'll go and have a look at them, or you can come up to the mics and come and talk to me at the end. Okay. We're going to start, though, with the first of our things. This clicker's not brilliant. There we go. With password policy. Okay. We're all familiar with the idea that in Active Directory, we can set a password policy. And in more recent versions of Active Directory domain controllers, we can set granular password policies. We can have different people on different settings and policies. We can have settings in group policy to put more complexity into passwords. But having said all that, I see so many customers where the account is set to do not expire, or the password is simple, or the user doesn't get the idea that having a password of some word and a number, the date after it, is not secure. Okay? Or the next time they change their password, they add 1 to it. Okay? And I always talk to my customers about the idea of passphrases. Okay? Some sequence of words, just something that they saw. So, for example, the room was fairly full. It's not a particularly long string to type in. And then when I come to remember my password the next time, and that isn't my password, by the way, but when I come to remember my password the next time, it's like, oh yes, I remember what it was. Something that jogs the memory. But it's going to be impossible, brute force, to attack that. Okay? When you move to Office 365, your identities can be in one of 3 places. You can have a cloud identity. The object is created, the user is created in Office 365, and although they may have an on-premise user, they're not related. The same person uses both. They log into AD on-premise, they log into the cloud with a separate username and password, which they may set the same, but it's a separate identity. Okay? You've got dir sync, where you can sync the user, okay, with password sync, and then you've got a federated identity. And those last 2, the user on-premise is related to the user in the cloud, and it's the same username and password. The authority that does the sign-in is different in the last 2, but it's the same password that they have on-premise. But you need dir sync, or for the last one, you need ADFS, or the like, to make it work. But how about cloud-only identities? Well, with cloud-only identities, there's now the ability to do self-service password reset, and that's what I'd like to show you here this morning. Okay? The idea of self-service password reset is the user goes to a page, they answer some questions, and they prove their identity. And then when it comes to the user forgetting their password, if they know the answers to the questions and they can prove their identity, they're allowed to reset their password. Okay? They don't have to go to the help desk. They can do self-service. Okay? It takes a little bit of setup, but everybody's familiar with the idea. Go to a decent website at the moment and you create an account, they'll ask you the questions so that you can reset it afterwards. It's the same idea. Okay? If your users are stored on-premise and there's a sync process in place, dir sync, and or ADFS, then you can get the self-service password reset as part of Active Directory, Azure Active Directory Premium or Azure Active Directory Basic. Okay, so there's an additional subscription, and that can give you password write back. So take a password, change it in the cloud, and write it back to your on-premises environment. So we're going to have a look here at password reset in the cloud. And on the screen, I've logged in already to my Office 365 portal. Okay? And to get here, all I did was go into the users section and click the passwords setting. Okay? And so we can see some stuff like I could turn on the never expire, and I can set password expiry settings and notification settings. Okay? But there's the let users set their own passwords, and you can turn it on in the Azure AD admin section center, it says, just to speed time. Oh, that didn't work, did it? Okay. I was hoping that would have worked in the background. Let me log back into that. Okay. I was hoping that would have done it in the background, and I would magically appear on the page I wanted to be on. Okay. You click the link in the users area of Office 365, and that's not going to work. Right, let me try this on a different machine, and we can demo this over here instead. Okay. Right, so I'm going to log myself back in again and go through those steps. Great. There we go. So, admin portal, which is over on the right, the users area, and then click the link again. So users, and then select active users. And while I wait for the list to appear, change your password expiration policy, change now, and that takes me back to where I was a few seconds ago, and hopefully I'll be able to log into Azure. And if it doesn't work, I'll tell you what I would have demoed instead, which is a shame, but hopefully that will work. Okay. Now, to get here, you need an Azure subscription. Okay. In more recent days, a couple of months back, really, when you click that link, it tells you that you need an Azure subscription, but you can have a free subscription just for this feature. Okay. So if you've never clicked that link, the first few things you might need to do will be to go through and confirm some settings and log into Azure. Okay. But when that's complete, and we've successfully logged in here, and this is a full Azure instance, but when you successfully log in, you'll get Azure with just the Active Directory node, just this menu entry visible. Okay. And so I can click my Active Directory entry here, and on the Configure tab over on the right, I can set up various things. Okay. Slightly off topic, okay, from here I can set up branding. I can give myself custom login pages and things like that as well from the branding section. But below the branding section, I've got my user password policy, reset policy. Okay. So I enable users to do that, yes. Restrict access. Maybe I only want some users to have this feature. Okay. If I click yes, it will make a group for me, and then I go and add to that group the people are allowed to password reset. So, for example, in my tenant that I have for my family, my wife and I are allowed to reset our passwords, but our children are not. That's a very trivial example, but I can do that. Okay. But going down to the settings, there's 4 things I can do to authenticate a password reset. Okay. And they are, as you can see on the screen, an office phone, a mobile phone, an alternate email address, and a security question. And I can choose how many of those methods the user must provide authentication details for. I've chosen 3. And then how many of those methods must be validated correctly for the user to log in. Okay. So, for example, if I ask them to set their settings, they'll be asked to provide answers to those 3. When they forget their password, they have to get 2 of those 3 correct. Okay. So I'm not expecting to get all of the questions I've asked them right. I'm expecting to get some of the questions, or some of the methods right. For example, they may have forgotten their password and not have their mobile phone to hand. If I said 3 of 3 must be answered, then they couldn't reset their password if they didn't have all the methods available to them. Okay. The last option is security questions. And on security questions, I can say how many questions I will ask them, 4, and how many they must get right for that authentication method to be completed. So they must get 3 of the 4 right. Okay. And then I can add my security questions. You can search the internet and find good security questions. You can search the internet and find bad security questions. For example, a good security question is one that has a decent answer that the person would know, but probably nobody else, and you'll all be familiar with the idea of mother's maiden name. Okay. A bad security question would be your great-grandmother on your father's side's middle name. Okay. What's the chance of you knowing that? Or, what was the name of your cat? You have a problem there because you could type in the name of your cat now. In a year's time, you forget your password. You're like, oh, cat died last week. That's a bit... And you could have a personal impact to the user. Or it could be, so you don't want questions that could change. My mother's maiden name is my mother's maiden name, and it will be that. Okay. Other questions, too short an answer. There we go. Driving motorbikes is scary. Discuss. Well, it either is or isn't, depending on your opinion. But if I'm trying to break into someone's account, I might try it the first time with yes, and I might try it the second time with no. There we go. There wasn't many options to the answer. Okay. So I add those in, and I would add in as many questions as you can first time and not change them, because you don't want to take away a question that a user has answered, because they're relying on that question being there for the password reset. Okay. There's some other settings, like whether they have to see this page and how often we check their answers with them. Okay. And then down the bottom, there's the stuff about writing it back if you have the Azure Active Directory Basic or Premium feature set. Okay. So let's pop over to one of my users. And my user has gone to the password reset page. They haven't filled in any of their questions. And so on the screen, they get the 3 questions they're required to answer. And they need to fill them in. And if it's, for example, an email address, they'll get an email. They have to click a link and so on. If it's a phone, it will ring them and prove that they own it. And we'll come back to that functionality later. Okay. Let's have a look at the questions, security questions, just for example. We go through the list. We pick our question. Motorbike is scary. And this particular person would say no, but that's a bad question, as we said. Mother's maiden name, let's go Smith, etc. And so I fill in the answers to the questions. Actually, it doesn't like no. It's not 3 characters or more. Okay, so that's a bad answer. Okay. And so the user would fill in that information. And I'm just going to log out of this user, which I could have done from there. And I'm going to sign in as Ignite Demo.co.uk. And this is a branded UI, so that kicks in when I type in the domain name. And I know her password, so I'm not going to type her password. Let's say I've forgotten her password. That's not right. Let's try that again. Forgotten her password. Let's go, can't access my account. And then this is the process the user would go through. First of all, they just have to prove they're not a robot. Okay, and we're going to try and do this without breaking the demo. I think that's right. It probably isn't, but there we go. Oh, that worked. Okay, and there we go. I've got the 4 questions, of which I have to answer 3 of them. And it says, right, which one do you want to pick? So I can send my email to my alternate email, which in this case isn't my alternate email, it is my email. And if I haven't got my password, I can't read it. But then again, it could be syncing to my phone. And so although I don't know my password, my email might work to my phone. Okay? I can send a text to my mobile, I can call my mobile phone, I can answer my security questions. And I have to get the answers. I have to get 2 of those 3 right. Okay? And so as long as I complete 2 of these 4 things and 3 of those 4 questions, it will let me reset my password. Okay. Let's close that one. And that's to complete that one. Okay. So that's the idea of self-service password reset and the ability to take the load off help desk, for example, and also to add that functionality into your organization if you have a bigger organization and you have the premium and the basic accounts. Okay. Another way to secure my Office 365 tenant is to do data loss prevention. Data loss prevention, I'm going to try and ensure that my data of a confidential or personal nature cannot be uploaded, shared, emailed as I require. Okay. Now, DLP in Exchange has been around for a number of years, and there's a number of sessions in previous conferences you can watch videos on for that. But DLP in SharePoint and OneDrive for Business is new. It's currently in preview, and it's available to selected tenants, and so I've enabled in my tenant to show you it in here. Okay. The idea behind DLP in SharePoint Online and Exchange and OneDrive for Business is I set up a policy that says this sort of data is not allowed in my organization, okay? Or I could say not allowed to be shared external to my organization. And then when someone puts content of that data into a SharePoint document library, it will alert them. In Office 2016, it will alert them at the point of saving in the Office application. So as you save an Excel spreadsheet with credit card numbers in, for example, and you have a policy that says no credit card numbers or no more than X number of credit card numbers, then it will tell you as you try and save the document. Okay? And so that's Office 2016 is in preview. At the moment, it's slightly after the fact. They're going to try and bring it up to the point where it's at the point of saving, at the point of use that it will tell you. And what it will do is, if it fails policy, it will block the document so the user can't see it. So the users can't see it, apart from the last user, the last person who modified the document, so the person who took the document out of compliance, the site owner, and various other administrators. So it becomes unavailable to the general people who use the document. Take it back out of compliance, fix that problem, and you'll be able to sort out the issue, and it'll come back into compliance. So in this demo, what I'm intending to show you is the policy tip feature, and we'll see that, and the rules that I've created to make this work. So in this demonstration, we'll start off, I'll move over to the presentation screen, okay, and we can see a standard SharePoint document library. And if you look on the icons to the left of the file names, to the titles, you'll see some of those documents have errors in them. Let's just make that a little bit bigger, and you can see that. Okay. So, for example, this chargeback accounts large document. This chargeback accounts large document is blocked. It's got a no entry sign on it. Okay. This document has, I think, 12 credit cards in it. Okay. And my policy gives me a policy tip. Let's zoom back out so I can see the policy tip. There we go. And so this has a custom policy tip that I wrote myself. Okay. So I tell you things like phone the help desk on, etc., etc. Okay. But it contains credit card numbers. I would need to resolve that. I've also got the ability, which would open it and allow me to edit it. I've also got the ability to allow overrides. There could be a legitimate business justification for doing that, and I can allow that to take effect within the policy as well. Just close that one and take a look at, for example, the chargeback account small, and click the policy link. Then there's a standard policy link I haven't customized, and this particular one has less than my cutoff of 10 credit cards. And so here I'm told the data is should be fixed, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so I've decided that over 10 credit cards, it absolutely must not be saved to my document library and is not visible to anybody else. But under 10, and I'll give you a warning and let you know that I'm going to that you really ought to fix that problem. Okay, so in Office 365, let's get to the portal, okay, and newly added to the bottom left-hand corner of your portal is the Compliance Center link. And it's in the Compliance Center that you set all this up. So I'll just click a link to take me into the Compliance Center. And if you go to your Office 365 portal at the moment, and you go into the Compliance Center, you'll probably find 4 or 5 items on the list. There's more things being added to this, and these are in preview. Okay. So I've got a couple of things like device management, which we'll come back to, data loss prevention. So you won't see these in your tenant at the moment unless you're actually in the previews. So you'll see things like Exchange archiving, retention, policies and holds, to hold or delete data to a rule. Drive data import by disk shipping is coming. And then permissions, who's allowed to actually open up the Compliance Center and view it. Okay. So under data loss prevention, this is where you create the policy. Okay. So I've already created one policy, and we'll just wait for that to refresh. It comes on the screen. I called it credit cards. And in the credit card policy, I can come in here and I can change it and modify it, and I can create them with SharePoint as well if I want to roll them out across many tenants, for example. So here it gives me the idea that, first of all, I can say where, okay? So in SharePoint and in OneDrive, and I can say specific sites or specific OneDrive for business user sites as well. Okay? So I just, for ease, have set it across everything. Under rules, I define what's considered out of compliance. And if you've done this in Exchange, it's very, very similar. Okay? So, for example, I have a rule that says credit card low. Okay? So just double-click to open up that particular rule. And it's anything that the system detects as a credit card, and it's not just a 16-digit number, it's the intelligence behind the system for other things that indicate a credit card. So, for example, a valid number with the word Visa, with CVV, and a 3-digit number next to it, for example, would be a credit card. But a 16-digit number with no other contextual information that implies it's a credit card would not be a credit card. So SharePoint will scan the data on save and on index, and this particular rule says between 1 and 9 credit cards, and I can change the numbers. And these are just the defaults. And this rule says between 10 and upward. Okay. And then there's a general setting which says what I'm going to do. And here I'm turning it on and blocking, protecting content. So you can see the icons that I showed you earlier in the document library. I could just turn it on in audit mode and run reports. So the users are not impacted with their general work, which we may think is a bit suspect that they're posting credit card numbers on public shared locations, for example. But we don't want to turn it on and block immediately because we might impact a legitimate business function that maybe we want to change, but we can report on it. And within the rules, I can say things like send alerts and so on. So, for example, if I open up the low count rule, I've got an action, send a notification, use the policy tip, and send an incident report, and record that as a low severity level. So I go into the reports, I can record that it's a low hit issue or a high hit issue. And then I can do things like how many documents are high in terms of reporting. Okay. So that's where I set it up, and that's where the user sees it. Okay. Also available to me is eDiscovery. Okay. And in eDiscovery, again, just to save time, I've already created an eDiscovery case. But it's in eDiscovery that I can search for data that is not compliant with regards to sensitivity policies. Okay. So I'll open up the case that I've already created and just maximize this. It's a little bit easier. This is a separate SharePoint site that is used for identifying and putting data on hold. So, for example, this data is business critical, you cannot delete it. Okay? Or, for example, finding data that I might want to get edited, removed, and so on. So down in my search and export area, I've got a more than 5 credit cards anywhere. Okay? And I created that the other week. And we can see, let's just zoom into that one, we can see that the query is sensitive type equals credit card number, the words credit card number, that's the name of the data policy that is in the rule that we had up earlier. It's exactly the same wording that was in the rule. Pipe 5 ... in other words, 5 and upwards. Okay. Scroll across to the right, click search, there we go. There are 4 documents in the whole of my SharePoint library that are meeting those rules. There they are. Chargeback accounts, large. It has 12. In the title, I wrote the fact it has 12. It's not telling me there are 12 instances. That's in the title of the document. Who the author is and when it was created, and so on. Okay. I have this lovely document with loads of dodgy data in it for blocking. And look, it's found it. Of course, I would expect it to. It's got hundreds of pretend credit card numbers in it. Okay. But for example, I could change this. I could say something like, let's take out the numbers. Okay. And so there are 7 documents in my organization that just have credit card numbers in them. Okay. I may decide that actually I don't want anything storing data that is personally and privately identifiable or financial information of this nature. So, for example, someone's put a credit card number in a travel request document. There's the documents we had earlier. We found some more stuff. Okay. And these search keywords that I've got, I can do things like, let's finish off with one more. Just go to the right and, oops, no, sorry. Let's try that again. And what should we do? Sensitive type. Equals, let's get the spelling of this right. US/UK passport number. And search. Okay, and there's two documents that contain credit card numbers and passport numbers. Okay. And so I could open them up and look through them. Okay. All right. Okay. Next one I want to demo in terms of security in my Office 365 tenant is rights management. Okay. The ability to encrypt a document and to store with the document a policy that says what the document is allowed to do, or the people who are allowed to open the document are allowed to do. For example, in rights management, I could say something like, it can be opened by the executive team, that being an email-enabled group, and they are allowed to view the document. Okay. I could say something else, allowed to be opened by the HR department, and they're allowed to print and edit the document. So the people who are allowed to view, edit, and so on, and what they're allowed to do. And it's encrypted documents with the policy of the document stays with it. It now does not matter if I put that file on Dropbox, Google Drive, a USB key, stick it in an email and send it to the wrong person. Okay? If you are not in that group, you cannot open that document. If you are in that group, you cannot do to the document the things I don't allow you to do. Okay? There's always ways around that. You know, I could disable the ability to grab a picture of the screen, but that's not going to stop me getting a camera and photographing the screen. You know? But in terms of the way the document is managed, okay, it's for the life of the document. Okay? And also, I've got the ability to remotely revoke it, and we saw that in the keynote yesterday. The document was discovered to be somewhere that our company shouldn't be operating. It's leaked. Someone's trying to hack into it. I get an email telling me the locations the document has been used in. Okay? And so I could disable all access to the document with just a click. Okay? So that's available in rights management. So what we're going to have a look at in this demo, let's try that again, that's not working. Let's go have a look at in this demo, is to create some, oops, go back one. There we go. To create some policies, to show you the policy creation, which is the user, who, when, why, and to actually go and encrypt a document. Okay. So this is all available off the portal, okay, and under, scroll up, okay, under service settings, there's a link for rights management. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm not on the screen. Let's go back over that. Okay, so under service settings, there we go, there's a link for rights management, and open that in a new tab. Okay. And it's going to take me to Azure, and I'm wondering if it's going to not, oh, it's going to let me in this time. Okay. And so there's a big button that says activate. I click the big button, and that turns on rights management in my tenant. Okay. If you've got an E3 license, you've got the rights to do this. If you haven't got an E3 license, then you can buy in the Azure rights management add-on license. Okay. And once you've activated it, you can go into advanced features, and that takes me into, and I might have to go to a different machine if it's going to not log me in. It takes me into Azure, and in Azure and the Active Directory part of Azure, I can create templates, which are who, when, where, what, and why, in effect. Okay? And then I can push those out to the applications that can use them. Okay? See if it's going to let me log in this time. No, let's pop over to, where is it? There it is. Okay. So in my Azure tenant, I select Active Directory, and on the right-hand side of Active Directory, I've got Rights Management, which is where that link would take me to. Okay. And in here, apart from the Getting Started page, there's only one entry, templates. And when I click Activate, it creates for me two templates. It creates for me company name view only and company name confidential view only. Sorry, company name confidential and company name confidential view only. Confidential is anybody in the company can open the document, okay, and edit and so on. Confidential view only is anybody in the company can open the document, but they can't do anything other than view the document. So those two templates are made for me. I can then go and create my own after that. Because it takes a little bit of time for these to kick in and process through the system, more than the few minutes I've got in the demo, not very long, I've created an additional one. Okay. And then I can create some extra ones. Let's have a look at the one I've created already, just to show you what I can do. Okay. So I created one, company name, the name is my choice, company name, management only. And so in terms of rights, who's allowed to open the document protected with this template? People who belong to the management group. Okay. So I pick an email-enabled group or groups, and if you're in that group, you can open that document. Scope is new, hence the preview icon that appears next to it. Not every RMS-enabled application supports scope, but the idea of scope is if you're in this group, you can see this template on your list of things to protect with. Okay? Because every template appears in the UI. So if you have a long list of templates, the user won't know which one to pick. So the recommendation is you have a good handful. With scope, I can say, well, here's templates for the management team. Here's a different set of templates for the HR department. Okay? And I keep the UI much smaller, the list of things I can choose from. Okay? So that's new. Not every application supports scope. And then finally, configure, which is what I'm going to do with it. Okay? So for example, I've got a descriptive language. Okay? And I pick the language, and then based on the language in the application or the browser, it will display the name of the template and the description in the language that matches. Okay. So I've put the Czech language in here, and I've got from Bing Translate, because I can't speak Czech, my title and my description. I've also put in American English, and I got that from Bing Translate as well, because I can't speak American English either. And I can carry on and put in titles. It will default to American English if your title, if your language is not there. There's about 16 languages or so that it supports. Okay. And then carrying on down the list, I can set things like expiration content. So, for example, this document is visible for a month and no more. Try and open it after the time, it will not open. Okay. Offline access. How often do I have to go back to Azure RMS and get the rights to open this document? So if I said something like daily, I'd have to be online and authenticate and get another key or get the rights to open it. Okay. If I said forever, a long time, I can go offline, I can be disconnected, and I can open the document because on this machine I've cached the key to open it. Okay. So I can pick a time, the default's a year, but I can pick it based on my requirements. Okay. And then up at the top, I've got the ability to set publish and archive. Okay. And publish is one that the user can use. Archive is one that they can't create new content with, but they can open previously created content with that template. And finally, because I missed it, back under rights, I listed the groups. The group then says what they can do. So they can edit, read, write, print, and so on. Okay, so I can set that back over there. Okay. So for my user, for example, I could, let's start Word for a user. Okay. And I've logged in here as Stephen. And I could create some random Greek there on the screen. And I can go File, Protect Documents, Restrict Access. And the first thing I need to do is connect to the Rights Management Service. And, great demos. Okay. Doesn't appear to think I'm logged in. But I am. Let's sign out and sign back in. And then the idea is that, let's go and get his username. Okay, and let's go back to info, protect. Oh, there we go. Okay, and we see that when I've logged into the application, I can reach rights management because I've connected to the internet, and I can choose my templates on the list. So, for example, I'm just going to set confidential view only. Go back, and I get a banner telling me this. Now, if I save that to a file share, it can be opened but not read by anybody in my company. If someone takes it and emails it or shares it inappropriately, then they can't view it unless they're a member of the group. Okay. And so I've got the ability to take a document, encrypt and protect a document, regardless of where that document ends up. Okay. In SharePoint, I'm not going to show you this one for time reasons, but in SharePoint, I've got the ability, where I want to be there. I've got the ability in SharePoint to create a document library and set RMS on the document library. So anything I drop into the document library gets encrypted at the point of dropping it in. The user doesn't even have to go through the UI and choose a template. Just by the fact they've saved it to a given location, does the document get protected? And therefore, if you haven't got rights to the document library, anybody who downloads it and puts it somewhere else, the document is protected. And in email, I can do the same thing. I can go into Exchange, I can send the email, and I can choose to protect it at the user end, or I can write a transport rule that does things like if the content contains certain words, or the recipient is a certain person, or so on, then protect it with rights management. Okay. So there's a number of ways of turning it on, both automatically and for the user as well. Okay. I'll do questions at the end. Okay, thank you. All right. So that's what's available to me with rights management. Now, in the keynote, there was the bottom one on there, the rights management sharing application. So very briefly, let's pop back over to here. And take a document, for example, and right-click. And if I've installed the sharing application, I've got the ability to right-click a document, choose a template, and share it. So that's email it at the moment. Okay? And I can choose what templates I'd like to apply. So it's a right-click to a document type. Or I can share in place. So share protected and protect in place. And it will take the document and protect it. Okay? There's lots of stuff available online. You can look into that in more detail. But just as an example, I can do that. Okay? So, for example, company-defined protection. It will log in, and it will try and retrieve the protection lists from the site. There we go. It hasn't downloaded all of them at the moment. But I can choose the template I'd like to protect the document with. And then this is protection in place. Or if I did right-click, protect and share, it would ask me the email address. It would protect it, place it into an email, and allow me to send it to that person. Okay. And you can download the sharing app from, you can bring up your search engine and go and find that, and it's relatively easy to find. Okay, so next one, Office 365 message encryption. Okay. This requires rights management enabled before it works. Okay. So you would go through the steps to enable rights management, and then you can enable Office 365 message encryption. Okay. This provides you the ability to send an email without sending it, in effect, should we say. That's why I put send in quotes. Okay. You write an email, you mark it in a way that's suitable to your organization to say, I want to encrypt it. The email goes to Exchange from Outlook, from your phone client, whatever, to Exchange. Exchange sees that it needs to be encrypted, and it sends to the recipient a notice telling them that they have an encrypted message that they need to go and get. They don't actually get the message. I mean, the message never leaves Office 365. The recipient gets an email saying, come and get your encrypted message. They come to a portal, they log in, and they can see in an OA-like interface the message, so where they can reply to it and so on. Okay. So you're just telling the user, the recipient, there is an email they need to see. You're not sending it to them. Okay. They can then log in. If they've got an Office 365 login, a company login, they can log in. If they need to set one up, they can set one up. If they are logged in as somebody else, I'm constantly logged in as lots of different people, you can do one-time passcodes. So I can click that link and I'll get an email, I'll get a number sent to me, a unique ID, and I can log in with that one-time passcode, and it works for 15 minutes. So I've got the ability to do that as well. I can do customization of the portal and a few things like that. So let's pop over to my tenant, and I'll show you setting up some of this. So over in the portal, I'm going to Exchange. And while that's bringing up that UI, I'm going to bring up PowerShell. And there's a get IRM configuration PowerShell commandlet. And it's in here that I will configure Exchange. Exchange needs a bit of PowerShell to configure it. I've done that. Okay? The documentation for doing that's available online. But I've enabled, internal licensing enabled. I've turned on RMS for Exchange. And I've told it the location, and these links, these URLs are available online, which data center you will find my RMS keys in effect. Okay, so there's 3 or 4 commands to run. I've enabled those. Okay. And in my case, I'm going to do it all by transport rules. Okay, so let's find a transport rule. And I've got a transport rule that says, if certain conditions of the message are true, send it off for rights for message encryption. Okay. So there's my first one here. Encrypt external recipients by message classification. And my transport rule just looks for a property in the message, it's a message header. Okay. And so it's if the message has a message classification of encrypt external recipients, and it's going outside the organization, then encrypt it with Office 365 message encryption. Okay. Now, to do this particular set of things, I've created a message classification and I've distributed it to my users. The user would go into Outlook, write the email, go to the Permissions tab, and choose the Encrypt for External Recipients message classification. I could do, for example, the sensitivity header. So I could choose a setting where it's like, if the message is marked as confidential, that's another property that you can have for messages in Outlook. Okay. Or, and this is a very basic one, and so may have false positives to it, if the subject contains the word encrypt. You know, if the user writes the word encrypt in the subject, we take it and we encrypt it. Okay. The problem with that, of course, is if they misspell encrypt, they intended to encrypt the message, but it doesn't get encrypted. Okay. So it's got some flexibility that may not be ideal given that you want to encrypt a message. Okay. So take a property of the message and enable Office 365 encryption for it. Now, because emails take a little bit of time to come around, I've got some examples to show you of existing emails. Okay. So here's an email I sent to myself and received earlier. Okay. And this is the email the recipient will get. Okay. You have received an encrypted message from sender. To view the message, click the attachment, okay, and sign in with my login credentials. Okay. So just open that attachment. And so encrypted message from, sign in and view my encrypted message. Now, I'm not signed in as this user. I'm signed in as my demo user. And so rather than signing out of my entire demo environment and signing back in and so on, okay, I could click a link, get a one-time passcode to view this message. Okay. And what will happen is I will get an email to that inbox with a number in, and that email will say, are you doing anything? It's spinning. There we go. There we go. I'll get an email that says, to open the message 4122, please enter the passcode. That's a previous passcode. And my email should be arriving any second now, as my Microsoft band on my arm has vibrated and told me I have an email. There we go. There's my email. And there's my number. I can paste my number in there and continue. And now I will see that email. I didn't log in. I got the number as a second factor to my email address, in effect. Okay? And I'll be able to open that message, and it's not particularly exciting, because if it really was an encrypted message, I certainly wouldn't be showing it on the screen. Okay? Well, that's the ability to do that. And then the user could reply, but they have never sent it across their network. It's stayed within Office 365. Okay? So, for example, sending users passwords and things like that. Okay? So my password's password. It's super secret. You'd never guess. And please don't tell anyone what it is. Okay. I've also got the ability, let's minimize those screens, I've also got the ability, let's close that one and open this one, to configure the portal. And you configure the portal in PowerShell, but I can do things like, you've received an encrypted message from the NB Consult secure messaging system, and I can add a logo to the bottom as well. So I've got a little bit of flexibility in how I can customize both the email and the notification message that would appear. Okay? So it's got my logo again, and it's an encrypted message from, and it's got the name of the portal at the top rather than Office 365 portal. It's got the NB Consult portal. Okay. So I've got a little bit of customization that I can do as well. Okay. And so if you've got an E3 tenant, this is available to you, okay, just like the RMS is available to you as well. Okay. On that slide that's just gone was the PowerShell to do the customization in the bottom of the slides, and of course you can download the slides and get them later. Okay, the one that I suspect isn't going to work in the demo because it's quite a complicated one, but we'll see if it works. Mobile device management. This is new to Office 365. Okay? It's effectively a small version of Microsoft Intune available in Office 365. And the idea here is that we can configure a phone, a mobile device, and we can allow the applications that we consider corporate to run on the mobile phone only if the phone is registered as a corporate device. Okay? So I can take an unregistered device, I can register the device. The user of the device needs to belong to a group that I've set some device policies against. And then when that user logs in to their phone, they try and open email in ActiveSync, or they try and open OneDrive for Business or an Office application, for example, it will tell them they can't log in and use that, or they can log in, but they can't use it until the device becomes registered. Okay? On a Windows phone, Windows device, that's through the Workplace Join functionality. On an Android and an iOS device, that's available via the Intune company portal, and it gives you a link to loading up the company portal. Okay, so I'm just going to flick over to my presentation machine and just show you some of the functionality that's available in here. Okay. So again, this is all found in two places. Once this is enabled on your tenant, you've got mobile devices on the left-hand side, and it's in the mobile devices UI that you can create security, that you can look at the devices and the state of the device. So I have no registered devices. Okay. And you can click a link, and that takes you into the Compliance Center for creating the policies. So I'll click that in a moment. Okay. There's also a report that shows you how devices have become compliant or not compliant, and so on. Okay. To do an iOS device, you need to have a APN certificate for iOS, and click that link, and 4 or 5 web pages later, with an Apple ID login that you've made for your company, rather than the one you have personally if you're on iTunes, etc., then you have a certificate that allows you to manage iOS devices as well. It's relatively easy to go through that step. Okay. So let's go and have a look in the Compliance Center. So I click the link to take me into the Compliance Center. As we've seen this one earlier, I said that device management was on the left. Okay, so if you go to your Compliance Center, you probably won't see this yet, but you will start to see this when this feature gets rolled out. Okay. So I've created a policy called Chicago Staff. My user, Stephen, is a member of Chicago Staff. He's a member of that group. Okay. And again, I've made the policy because it takes a little bit of time to make the policy and have it replicate into Intune, and for it then to be pushed out to devices. So I've made one in advance, so it's all ready to go. But I give it a name and a description. I give it some requirements. So, for example, it's going to require a password on the device. It's not going to allow me to have a simple password like 1234. Okay? It's got to be at least 4 characters. Okay? So these are my very basic compliance policies. It's not going to allow a jailbroken device to connect. Okay? And if we don't meet these criteria, I'm going to block access to the device. So the device must go into compliance before I can access my email from the company on the device, or before I can open OneDrive for Business and therefore open other documents from that app. Okay? So I set those properties in there. Okay? I could allow access and just report on it as well, but that's not anywhere near as good a demo. Okay? In terms of configuration, there's other things I can do. Okay? For example, I could block screen capture, turn off Bluetooth, and so on. Yeah, the ActiveSync type stuff that we had for a while. But we've got this policy set here, and it's much more control and much more functional than available in the Exchange ActiveSync feature set. In fact, if you have Exchange policies, these will override them. So these need to be at least the same as or a superset of them when you come to implement this. Okay. So that's all been created, and deployment, the group or groups that I want to apply the policy to. Okay. So let's pop over to my iPhone, and let's try and have a go. We're going to use the OneDrive for Business app because it's a little bit quicker than doing it with I can't type, can I? No, well. Oh dear. You see, in all my practice, I can type perfectly well. I think it's the size of the room. It makes the phone look much smaller. My office is definitely not this small. Okay. And we'll just stick a password in there. Okay, and so Office 365 logo, it says you need to enroll this new device so that we can recognize it before you can access your organization's resources. So I click enroll, okay, and it takes me effectively to the App Store to tell me to install the Intune Company Portal tool, which I have already installed. So I will bring up that particular application. And that application will ask me, so it says it's unenrolled. Okay, I click OK, so I'm going to sign in. And it being a separate app, I have to do all that again. And once again, I can't type. Thank you. I'm a Windows Phone person. I'm much more used to that keyboard. Okay, let me just pop over to that. Because it just occurred to me that that's recording my passwords. Okay, so sign in. Okay, so we sign into the company portal. And on signing into the company portal, there's a bunch of things going to happen. It's going to check that the device is valid to the rules that we've set. Okay. I don't have a PIN number set on this device. I'm going to choose enroll on that. To put the PIN number on, I'd become uncompliant within an hour if I don't put a PIN number on. So I've got an hour to set a PIN number. Okay. But the device is getting added to the company portal. Okay. And we can see on there some details about it. I click install to install the certificate that allows me to encrypt, to put me into the company portal. Okay. So you'd probably want to run through this and produce a document to provide to your users because there's a number of steps. And obviously different versions of mobile devices are going to look slightly different. Okay, and this being iOS, I click install again. I click trust on that one. Okay. And it will connect to the internet. It will download all the information that it needs. It will download the rules and policy, install the profile. The profile is installed. Done. The device will get added to the portal. It does a lot of stuff automatically for me. Okay. And then this device is now enrolled. It's that the MDM layer has been enabled on this device for the MDM provider, which is the free mobile device management within Office 365. It's got a name. Let me pop over to that machine here. Let's go briefly to the portal, rather than opening up another tab again. And I should see this device within mobile devices on the portal. Okay, there we go. There's the name of the user and the name of the device, where I can do things like, I'm not going to do this, but I could full wipe the device. I could selective wipe the device. So, for example, if I was to take a photograph of you all for my personal records and then selectively wipe the device, the photo I took, being personal data, would not have been removed from the phone. Okay. So unlike active sync policies, the phone would have been fully wiped. Here I've got the ability to do selective wipe. Okay. And now if I go into OneDrive, again, I have to sign in. I'm not going to go any further. But if I signed into OneDrive, it would complete that process for me, and Stephen would be allowed to log in, and Stephen would then be able to open up his company data in OneDrive for Business because the device is listed in as an enrolled device. Okay. And I can take it. I can wipe it when he leaves and stuff like that and be selective on the wipe. Okay. So it comes with things like conditional access. You must be compliant with the rules before you get access to corporate data. It's user level, not device level policies. So it's Stephen's devices says what Stephen can do. Not Stephen on his iPhone can do this and Stephen on his Android tablet can't do that. It's what Stephen can do. Okay. As device management, I've got the ability, therefore, to set those policies and to selectively wipe the device if I need to and to report on that. Okay. In the slide deck, I've got a bunch of the pictures that we saw on the screen if you want to refer to them for later. Okay. All right. Next one up is multi-factor authentication in my remaining 20 minutes. Multi-factor authentication, the ability to provide more than just a username and password to access Office 365. Okay? I need something I know, a password, and I need something I have, which would be, for example, a device. Okay? Again, let's pop over to my demo machine, and we'll turn this one on. Okay. So in the portal, users and active users. And I've got a link for multi-factor authentication. And click Setup. And that will take me to an area of Azure, but it allows me to set up multi-factor authentication. Okay? Again, this is a free feature with Office 365, as long as you've got a license. I'm just going to turn this on for a user called Jenny. Okay. So actually, she's already already on. Anyway, she's enabled for Jenny. Okay. I've got two options. Okay? I can be disabled, therefore it's not going to work for me. I can be enabled, and enabled is browser-based. If I go into a browser-based application, I will have to set up multi-factor auth. But if I go into a rich client like Outlook or Link, it will work with just my username and password. Okay, so that's enabled. When I move to enforced, okay, I have to have multi-factor auth for everything. If the application does not support multi-factor auth, then I have to use what's called an app password, which will be provided to me, and I can go and get other app passwords later on. It's a cryptographically secure 16-character password. Okay? And so things like Outlook 2010 doesn't work with multi-factor auth. Therefore, I'd have to enter my username and my app password, not my username and my password to work. I specifically didn't mention Outlook 2013 there. Outlook 2013 and more recent builds, more recent updates of it are starting to work with a thing called modern authentication. And modern authentication is to allow rich clients like Outlook and so on, Word, Excel, etc., to do multi-factor auth in there as well. So when you sign in, when you start up Outlook and it asks you for your username and password, it will then ask you to answer your phone. Okay? And that's built into the client. So that will be available in Office 2013, current builds and onwards. And the settings are going to get turned on in the service over a short period of time. So I've got it enabled there for Jenny. Okay? And let's just disconnect from that virtual machine. And somewhere in here I've got, there we go, Jenny's email address. So let me just sign into this machine here as Jenny. Okay. And let's go through the process of doing this. Okay, so I go to the portal, okay, username and password, and I'm going to click sign into the password. And just before I do click sign into the password, let's just bring up my Windows phone on the network. Okay, and what I'm going to do is my phone is going to ring when I click sign in. So just click sign in, and we watch the two things. It goes, we're calling you on your phone. Please answer it to continue. You can see my phone on the screen. Now it's a UK number, so it's going to go halfway around the world and come back again. Okay, but the phone should ring in a few seconds. And there we go. So I'm going to answer my phone.
Thank you for using Microsoft Sign-In Verification System. Please press the pound key to finish your verification. If you do not initiate this verification, someone may be trying to access your account. Please press 0 pound to next forward. This will notify your company's IT.
So I'll just finish that by pressing hash. And you notice as I press hash, I'm logged in. Okay? That's multi-factor authentication. Okay? And so I needed access to the mobile phone, and I needed to know my username and password. Okay? And in the browser, it's really easy. It tells you what's going to happen. And so in the modern authentication, you will get a user interface like that. I'll show you a picture in a moment, where it's happening within the rich application like Word, Excel, and so on. Okay? This is multi-factor authentication for Office 365. In Azure, you can do multi-factor authentication for lots of other things as well. That's a paid additional service. But in the Azure bit of Office 365, in the Azure bit of multi-factor authentication, you can do things like change the greeting. So there you heard the message saying press the pound key. Well, we'll call it a hash key in the United Kingdom. So if I was a UK-only company, I might want to change the greeting to a UK voice and use language appropriate to what my users would understand. Okay. Also, if you've got the Azure piece, which is a per-user authentication charge, in the sense it's tiny amounts of money per user per month to do multi-factor authentication. If I have that enabled, I've got the ability to whitelist IP addresses. So I can put a range of IP addresses in and say, don't do multi-factor auth on these IP addresses. So I'm in my office, username and password works. I cross the road to Starbucks with my compliant device, and I'm not on my office anymore. And now I log in, username, password, and my device, my phone. Okay. I don't have to answer a call. I can answer a text and type the text in. Okay. I also have an application that I can do, okay, and it can ask me for to open the app and to verify that I'm the user. So I don't actually need a data connection rather than a telephone connection. So there's a number of form factors that are available to me. And so that's stuff that is coming soon, and you can request to sign up on the preview for that at the moment. Okay, if you go down to the Office 365 stand, there's a couple of people down there that are the product managers for that feature, and so you can talk to them about that. Okay. So the big picture on the right there, that's Outlook doing its auto-discover process, but it's popped up a box asking me to do my multi-factor authentication. So it's not just a username and password box anymore. Okay, it's a web page. Oops, sorry, it's a web page. Okay. All right. Advanced threat protection, another new feature that's coming. Unlike lots of the features we've talked about today, this one is not built into your E3 subscription. Okay? This is an additional subscription, and will be available later in the year. The idea of advanced threat protection is that there is a risk with email and spam and virus at the moment, where an email is sent, and at the point of sending, the email is okay, but at the point of clicking the link in the email, for example, the target of the link is now dodgy. The target of the link is now malicious. Okay? So there's no point, or not no point, but scanning the email at the point that it arrived, it looks okay. So you send it overnight, knowing that the chief executive of the company that you're targeting specifically will click that link at 9:30 in the morning when he gets in from his meeting. Okay? You want that link blocked at 9:30 in the morning, not when it was sent at 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay? And so advanced threat protection will do that. It will rewrite the links in the message so that the link is, when you click the link, it goes to a redirection site at Office 365. And if the site is now okay, or if the site is on a block list, you are blocked. If the site is not, if the site is considered safe, it's not on the bad website list, then you're allowed through to it. Okay? Also, in advanced threat protection is an additional level of malware protection. Okay? You receive an attachment. Okay? In advanced threat protection, there's safe attachments feature. It will take the attachment, it will spin up an Azure VM, it will drop the attachment into the VM, and it will execute, it will explode, they say. It will take the attachment and blow it up inside the VM. It will see what the attachment does. So if it's an exe, it will run it. If it's a Word document, it will open it. And it will look for activity on that attachment. So, for example, does the attachment start to download stuff, change registry keys, delete files, write files, and so on? Things that application shouldn't be doing. Okay? Now, that adds about 10 minutes. That's the targeted intended time to your email flow. Okay? So the email comes into EOP. The user is subject to advanced threat protection and has a policy that does this. The VM is spun up. The attachment is dropped in. It is checked. And if it's okay, it's sent on. 10 minutes later, thereabout, you'll get the attachment if it's okay. But if it was malicious, you will never get it. Okay? So it's not, and so the idea here is 0-day protection. We're not looking for something that we know already is malware. We're looking for something that when we executed it has very specific activity that is malware. Okay? So let's go and have a look at some of the stuff we can do in this. Pop back to my browser and pop over to the Exchange UI. Oh, no, wrong tenant. Let's open up a new tenant to do this. I've got this enabled on another of my tenants because it's preview, so I don't get it on all my tenants. Okay. And while that one logs in, let's go down there and go to Exchange. I'm just going to show you some of the stuff that comes in. So, for example, here's a real malicious link that I got in my email the other day. So here's some real spam. Okay, And, I know it's spam, I knew it was spam as soon as I looked at it, but not every user can do that. Okay, they click the link, and the link will take them somewhere suspicious. Now, I don't like clicking links in suspicious emails, okay, but I'm going to do it in the demo. And when I clicked it about a week ago, it was on the block list. So hopefully it's still on the block list. Okay? But if you look carefully, you can see in the tooltip that it's not going to the target. It's going to NA01 safelinks.protection.outlook.com. And then there's the URL it's actually going to. Okay? So I click that link. Let's try that again. Where did my mouse go? There we go. I click that link. And it will go to that site in a browser. And if that site is considered okay, ooh, there we go, that was a bad demo. Right. Of course, the thing is, you see, a week ago, that could have been a suspicious URL, and there could have been dodgy content behind it. And the dodgy content has been removed this week. I'm not going to execute it just in case. But let me show you a different example. Have I got? There we go. This is my sample. This is what it'll look like. Okay, so this is an email telling you that you need to give me all your banking details. Okay, and so I click the link, and this is what you would see. Okay, so if you get this and you're testing this, you can send emails with www.spamlink.contoso.com in, and you can test that this works. Okay, and so I get told that this is a dodgy website. I'm not allowed any further. Okay? From the company's viewpoint, I can report on this. How many people clicked suspicious links in their emails? Who do we need to send off for re-education? Okay, so we got that. And then, let's go back to my folders. I've got a real malware example. There we go. This was a dodgy email that was sent to me with malware in it. It went through the safe attachments process, and I got it to report on that to me. Okay? So if I didn't get it reporting to me, I would never have seen it. So this is a report telling me that an email was sent to Brian and that it contained something that, when executed, behaved maliciously in the virtual environment. And then it was sent on to the administrator. Okay? Now, I don't need to send it on to the administrator. I just have to show that example. So if I was to open that email, it contains something that is not going to be very beneficial to the health of my computer. So I'm not going to open that. Okay? But I could have these emails. I could go into the reporting, and I could see this information available to me. Okay? So in exchange, I get advanced threats, safe attachments, and safe links. And in this case, protect Brian only is a policy that I've created. And so in terms of settings, it's block attachments that are malicious and send the reports to. And it's applied to when the recipient is. And that could be a recipient, it could be a domain, it could be a bunch of different settings. Okay, there's a few rules that I can apply. Okay. And the other option that we saw as well with the red web page, safe links. Okay, safe links for everybody on my domain. Okay, and so I've set this one up, and this one runs nicely against my family's tenant. Okay, and mouse has gone. There we go. So settings, rewrite the URLs. I could turn off user link tracking, so I can't report on it later. Do not allow it to go through the original URL. If I turned that off in the red bannered page, I would get a message saying, you shouldn't be going here, but if you really, really need to, click and carry on. Okay? And obviously that would, the user would need to be aware of the intent, and really I don't want them to do that. Okay? But I could allow them to go past that page. Okay? I can put some whitelists in, URLs that I'm never going to redirect for. Internal company sites, outsourced services like payroll and stuff like that. I could put their links in maybe and let them work. Okay. So that's advanced threat protection. It's got a lot of reporting. For example, we can see some of the reports that are available on the screen there. So attachments that were sent, attachments that were blocked, spam that was sent, and so on. Okay. In terms of client security, this was talked on the keynote, so I'm not going to mention this in much detail. It's keeping up to date with your Office 360, your patching, and making sure that you've got the latest security patches is always very important. There's also the ability, if you implement Active Directory Federation services, to do things like client authentication rules, client policy rules, where you say things like, if you're on this IP address, you can do this. If you're not on that IP address, you can't do that. Okay? And so we've got the ability to do that. You need ADFS to do that at the moment, But coming with part of the MDM solution, or in the full Intune MDM solution, you've got the ability to put rules and conditions in place to say you're allowed to do this if. Okay? So we can have things like you have single sign-on, but only if you're in the office on the network. Okay. I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to skip that particular demo. Okay? But the idea is, if you're interested, I can show you afterwards if you hang around. I can restrict access to a given range of IP addresses. I've got a login. I log in on one IP address and it works. I log in on a different IP address and it doesn't. Okay, that was that demo. Also, as I said, the ability to keep my clients up to date. The click to run deployment method for Office 365 Pro Plus. There's a couple of different sessions on making that work and how to control your deployment process. But you do it via an XML file, and you control the source path, which is in blue at the top, and you control the update path, which is in blue halfway down. For example, if you have no update path, it will automatically update from the Office, from the Microsoft's distribution location, and you can't control the updates. The updates just happen. But if you put an update path in, you can say where and when users update, because you control whether you update the update location. Okay? So you might do things like wait a few weeks and then roll out a test to some people in your company. They have a different XML file, got a different deployment location, and they would get updates to Office, and after a few weeks you're happy that their instance of Office is working. Therefore, you would then come to this share and update this share with the latest bits of Office. Okay? And then Office would update for everybody. Okay? So the ability to use a deployment process, and it's literally you deploy it and then you forget about it. You never, after that point, need to deploy Office ever again, because Office will just continually update, and when 2016 gets released, it will update into 2016. Okay? So no more big deployments for Office scenarios. Okay? Let's move on. There we go. Okay. Sharing content. We talked about sending emails. We talked about putting stuff in OneDrive locations. On the sharing link in Office 365 portal, you can see who's shared content with whom. That's a useful report to have access to. Okay? And you can also control and block sharing as well. Let's just drop that one, and come back to here. Okay. In my portal, SharePoint, where's my portal gone? Pop over to my portal. I've got the ability to go to external sharing, and on the sharing overview link, I can turn on and off sharing for different bits of Office 365. For example, I can turn off sharing for Skype for Business, i.e. Link Federation. I can turn off the ability to share data with third-party Office applications. I can turn off the ability or turn on the ability to share my calendar in Exchange. And I can do the ability to turn on and off sharing for SharePoint sites, for example. And if I click that link, it will take me to a page which shows me all my SharePoint sites. And then within a particular site, for example, this one, it will tell me how many people it's externally shared with. And I can click the link there, for example, and it will tell me those people, and I can remove their access that it's been shared to them. So I could say, okay, well, Brian at Reed, shared by Amy, is not allowed to read that content anymore. And so I could remove their rights. I didn't need to go into SharePoint. I didn't need to find the particular document that was shared to them. I have just blocked all their ability to access that particular document. Okay? And now we only have 2 people who have that data shared externally. Okay? So it's a very easy user interface to allow me to go and look at and control generally the sharing settings for my applications, but also in SharePoint to go and see whether you're allowed access to share it, whether you have access to, whether you have authenticated or anonymous sharing as well. Okay. All right. Let's finish off. Okay. This one's a new one, and so you can't do this yet, but the ability here is to have OneDrive for Business sync restrictions. You can only sync your OneDrive for Business libraries to machines that are joined to your domains. Okay. So if you search for the SPO Tenants Sync Client Restriction feature, it's currently rolling out, but you go and get the GUID of your domain. That's the first PowerShell command. And then the second PowerShell command, you say you can only sync to machines that are members of my domain. Okay? So people couldn't sync to home PCs and stuff like that. Okay. Be very aware of security, SSL and TLS, for example, Heartbleed and the Poodle environments, issues with the SSL environments. Be sure of what you're protecting and the types of firewalls and load balancers and network settings that you've got. There are issues with earlier versions of SSL, for example, enabling TLS and disabling SSL2 and SSL3. SSL2 certainly, and SSL3 can be highly recommended. Okay. We talked about reports. There's a whole heap of reports. I'm not going to show you any of them, but the ability to do things like how much storage space I've got, who shares stuff with what, who's logged into suspicious locations on the internet, and a lot of that stuff was talked about yesterday in the keynote, and the advanced threat analytics feature that was described yesterday. And so some of that will remove some of these just basic reports. It's much more active and much more interactive with what's happening on your network. Okay, so I won't do the demo for that one. The keynote sort of didn't get rid of it, but has added some much more useful stuff to it. Okay. All right, last couple, and then we're done. Okay, there are a couple of documents available. The links are in the PowerPoint. There's the Cloud Security for Enterprise Architects, basically a big summary of all these things. Okay, you can download that, take a look at it. It's Microsoft's Enterprise Cloud Architect documents and the Enterprise Cloud Roadmap, which is a SWAY-based document that describes a lot of this functionality and some of the security sites and stuff that's available. Okay. If anybody's put any questions on Yammer, I'll get round to answering them as well. If you've got any questions, come up and see me, and we can talk through those. And thank you very much for staying and attending. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Ignite.